Good morning, people of the internet. You're listening to Debi Radio 79.5 FM, a podcast where we discuss the movie Grosse Pointe Blank, 1 minute at a time. I'm your host, Dev Sadiga.
And I'm the other host, Hugh David. On today's show, we are going to be looking at minute 49 in the film. Still at Hippo Club, not quite the hippest place to be in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. And we will see Martin and Debbie get interrupted by the real world, penetrating their moment of joy, pleasure, and a little bubble around them as they return to their old ways. Joining us today on the show, we have broadcaster, podcaster, film critic, general man about town, Leslie Byron Pitt. How are you, sir?
How you doing? You right?
So far, so good. Have you been enjoying this week with us?
Yeah, really good fun. Really good fun.
It is different, isn't it? Very different way to do it.
Yeah.
Indeed.
It feels like a much more cutting room perspective of a movie. You're so in the weeds of it that you sometimes lose the overall, big picture perspective of the film. But
absolutely,
yeah, get ready for when you get to the climax, guys. Right? That's going to be interesting each minute.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, Dev, I always like to give you the lead on this because it is your favorite movie of all time. So talk us through this minute.
I feel like this week the Hippo Club scenes have kind of flown by because there's not a whole lot of like meaningful stuff happening, and yet everything meaningful is happening. This is we've said where these two are reconnecting, they're reestablishing their relationship, and they're doing it in the most like mundane way possible. And the tension has kind of been building, and they've had all this conversation about like going to the high school reunion together, actually, going on that quote unquote date effectively. And then everything just kind of gets shattered as Amy, played by Ann Cusack, the third Cusack in this film, blasts onto the scene, clearly already a few drinks in, and just disrupts everything.
Yeah, she's not in any other scene, is she?
Nope.
No, she's not.
I kept looking for her in the reunion, and she's not there, I don't think.
And I kind of really like that. Like, there is something to be said about, as Hugh says, the real world kind of shattering this kind of little intimate space. And so often it's something like this, and it's someone like this, where someone who knows both people intimately well, they're in there for one moment, and then they're kind of gone again. And a personal story, I won't go too deep into it because it's quite dark and a little bit tragic, but about 4 years ago, I was at Stoke Mandeville Hospital, and there was a reason why, and I was there. And I remember getting up and leaving. I went to go out to get some fresh air. And then suddenly I bumped into this guy that I went to school with, middle school, and worked with briefly when I was working at a cinema. And for some reason he was there. I had no idea why he was there. He was in a car, and we had the briefest conversation. I haven't seen him since. Literally, I don't know this guy so long, and you could tell he was trying to start up a conversation, but he knew what was going on with me at the same time, and it was this really weird moment. And this is what Amy kind of suggests to me. It's this really weird thing that the world just keeps going on, and people kind of know you and they don't, and they kind of just come in and they clatter, and it's a really, really nice bit of chaos. It's a really relatable bit of chaos. And what I like is as well with this moment, like looking back at the minute and how it starts with this very, very typical starry-eyed close-up shot of Minnie Driver. With the catch lights are in her eyes, and she's looking great and looking fantastic. And one of the reasons we kind of said off air, one of the reasons why I really like her in this is because she's really unconventional compared to everyone that we were seeing on screen at the time. And she doesn't look like anyone else. and it's really, really great. And I love the moment that they're just trying to get that connection going, and you can see the pacing of the conversation, everything kind of ramping up, and then boom, this drunkard comes in.
Oh, yeah.
Absolute drunkard, and she means well, and the intentions are good, but it just disrupts everything, and like that moment is kind of lost in ether. It's really funny. It's generally quite funny, and I love the way that she kind of tries to create her own intimacy in that moment, and she has no part of it at all. She's grabbing their arms and putting them together, and there's this kind of
Cringe, pure
cringy,
cringe.
but also like I love the intention of it, and the lines as well. Oh, you guys still together? And it's like, oh, where have you been? Like in the 10 years.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? That loops us back round to the encounters Martin was having before he found Debbie, and the people he was running into, and the things they were saying, and it just brings us back down to earth with a bump after all of this close up, close in, emotional. You know, we really. I've said before in some of the other episodes, this is a genre mashup as a film, and this, you know, we've been in the rom-com moment, and this is still in keeping with rom-coms, but there's something sharper to this as well. There's something more acidic to this, considering she's at the start of the minute, Debbie has said, I was just planning on staying at home and being mean to them on the radio, and now we find out why she was just planning on that. This is exactly it. Here is your concrete example, as well as a reminder for Martin. Oh yeah, this is why I didn't want to come back. And I feel like that's it's just beautifully timed. It's beautifully timed because also we then start to remember Martin, who Martin is, why he's there, what's going on. You know, this is starting to take us away from the bubble we've been in for most of the episodes this week, which was a beautiful, lovely, relaxing bubble for a moment. And now it's all shattering. By the way, minor point, there's some weirdly Amy is dressed not unlike her sister's character in The Office.
Yes,
I was just noticing that it's a little
Right?
bit Sergeant Pepper. Yeah.
Now get this. While we've been talking, I was just looking at some comms from various film people I know, and one of them was posting some photos of Bridget Fonda, who we mentioned off air as well. It's a publicity photo of her for Godfather 3. Guess what kind of jacket she's wearing?
Oh, really?
1991. Clearly it was a thing, putting redheads in button-up jackets in 91, 92 onwards. It's just like, okay, all right, so this is the thing. Which is just mad. I'm trying to get my head around it, like, what? But yeah, one of these days we'll have to get somebody who knows more about fashion on to talk about that stuff. Because I think I would genuinely be interested to know if this is just weird coincidences, or if this was like a Hollywood costume designer thing and nobody in the real world actually did it. Because I know Madonna did it at some point, and I'm pretty sure Paula Abdul did it, and
yeah,
like it's a fashion movie thing. I just don't ever remember seeing it in the real world.
Anyone real do it?
Yeah, basically.
I mean, it works. Like
totally.
It's textbook color theory, right? Blue and orange
Right.
is the rules of movie posters, right? If nothing else, like it's
the Michael Bay rule.
Oh god, yeah.
Teal and orange, yeah. But
Every
also
so often, I have a flash as to what would this film look like if Michael Bay had done it, and
well, that's
it
called
saddens
Pain
me.
and Gain. Because we've done Pain and Gain, haven't we?
Yeah, I've done Pain and Gain. It was good fun.
Yeah, we did do that one, and it is like the thing is, there are things about it that are so not like this film, and that's the Bay-esque element. I hate to say this because I do not agree with Mark Kermode about everything. I know he's one of your heroes, Les, but
yes.
I always think about him discussing Michael Bay as a pornographer. It fascinates me because I know Mark knows about pornography. I know his wife, as a professor of film, is a specialist in all kinds of areas to do with interesting erotic films and whatnot. And I still think he's not quite on the money with that. I still think that's not completely what Bay is, or what Bay does, or how he does things. I think it's even simpler than that. And I think Armitage is the complete opposite. Armitage is it's somebody who's lived, right? He's lived life. He's got experiences, and I think his films indicate that even though he can balance action and comedy and do all kinds of things, I feel like he's also got a handle on what his actors should be doing. and how they get it across
I mean, it's
in
interesting.
a way that Bay doesn't, because Bay's just like, stand there and look good, dude.
Well, the bit I remember, I think it was Lindsay Ellis that kind of did a breakdown of someone like Michael Bay, and one of the things that she said about Bay was just everything is big, everything is like he loves West Side Story, so everything is like the biggest moments from West Side Story. Nothing is like. He doesn't do subtle because none of the themes that he picks are ever meant to be subtle. Everything is moving. Everything is kinetic. That's how he visualizes things. And I think that's kind of why, bringing back Commode, I think that's why Commode can't deal with him. Because it's just that element of not knowing the subtlety about it. You're talking about a film critic whose favorite film is The Exorcist, which is like the Pixies of horror films. It's quiet, loud, quiet, loud, quiet, loud, quiet, loud. And with Bay, everything is loud, and when everything is loud, it just becomes noise to some people.
Yeah.
And
See, for me, it's like Slipknot, right?
Well, yeah,
If you know what, Slipknot worked for me originally because some of the kids I taught at the time told me I should listen to it. I went off and listened to it, and it was such a cathartic thing to be listening to. Someone who grew up on 80s new wave British heavy metal, it's such a radical departure from metal of any kind at that point. But it sounds one note.
Yes.
Until you actually are in the mood to listen to it and to really actually realize what they're doing and how they're doing and the subtleties within that. And that's Bay. Whereas in this sense, I feel like Armitage is much more blues, much more old school, which is kind of why the soundtrack's so interesting. Because the soundtrack is Cusack. The soundtrack is absolutely Cusack. But Armitage understands exactly how to edit it in and bring it in and when to use it.
I think there's something that we've been missing with regards to the soundtrack.
Okay.
I neglected to actually get back to mentioning Kathy Nelson's name in the last episode.
Oh yes, of course, Kathy Nelson. Good, well, we have
apologies for that. But also, Devi DeVincentis is one of the co-writers that did the rewrite with John Cusack and Steve Pink, and is also a musical consultant. And I think a lot of the musical input might have come from them. I think that's that portion of it weighing in. And obviously, Kathy Nelson has worked on other things and had a huge impact on them, and no doubt had a huge impact on this. And then, of course, Joe Strummer, who does some of the composition and some of the scoring as well. But I think that element of, having somebody who rewrote the script also being clearly thinking very intently about the musical elements of the film probably has a very big input on, how this film is structured and shaped around the natural inclusion of music.
Interestingly enough, DeVincentis has got this I did not know. He was already working with Cusack as a co-producer because one of my favorite TV westerns of the era, the Jack Bull, which has Cusack in it, was in '99. Was co-produced by him. So as they come out of Grosse Pointe Blank, they're working on films, making getting things Cusack wants to do, and then obviously there's High Fidelity. But he knows that era of the '90s really well because he was married to Natasha Gregson Wagner, who is, for those who know, is effectively Hollywood royalty in the sense of the family's responsible and all of that. I believe they're not married anymore. But what that means is he's become one of the go-to executive producers on American Crime Story.
Right.
And he's the showrunner of Pam and Tommy.
Yeah. Okay.
Which I find very interesting because now I wanted to watch that anyway, but now I'm thinking, okay, if one of the guys who worked on Grosse Pointe Blank is on it, then tonally I want to see how that miniseries works, because I suspect if anyone understands how to do the 90s right,
I think they do a really good job of the 90s, and I think it's a difficult one because from a feminist perspective and looking at it from that point of view, Pam and Tommy is not great. Not great at all. But from trying to watch it from a certain distance, I do felt me and I think my wife kind of watched it and really enjoyed what we were seeing from a historical point of view. But because there is that element of, because Pamela Anderson not really giving it her blessing or anything else like
Yeah, it
that.
makes it awkward.
It makes it really, again, goes back to what we were saying, cringe
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunate, because I think they do a good job of just kind of nailing that tone at the time. So what is it about, like, John Cusack having both his sisters harangue him in this movie?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. I mean, is it because, you know, this is their first, this is the first big, this is the first production to come out of him as a producer with his producer hat on,
Right.
and it's being shot in LA, standing in for Grosse Pointe, Michigan. So presumably, it's very much a question of, you know,
Who's
and
available?
he's, yeah, who's not just who's available, but who can you get easily, you know?
Yeah, and I think also knowing exactly what he's going to get, right?
Yes,
Like,
that's the other thing.
You know, with him also being involved in the rewrites, I think maybe not so much for this character, but certainly for Marcella, for Joan Cusack's character, I think a lot of that writing was very much with her face in his mind as he's writing it. It feels that way. Like, this feels like the most Joan Cusack of all Joan Cusack's roles. Like,
Yes.
it just feels like her. So quintessentially her, and you know, partly that's probably because I've watched this more times than every other film that I've seen of hers combined. But you know, she feels so natural in that role, and I think that is a big part of it. I think he was writing to that in part, and I think that's true of a couple of other characters as well. I think Jeremy Piven's character of Paul is another example of that.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There's that one line about the radio station, and you can just see Minnie Driver's eyes go roll into the back of her head, go, yeah, it's. I think. It's when
It's so timeless.
Timeless. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's such a you just cold on my back when that happens.
There is something so real about the casual celebrity that she faces in this film.
Yes.
That, like, I don't think I'd have thought to include it. Like, it clearly comes from this place that John Cusack is probably at when he's rewriting this. That this is, you know, the frustrations of now having become a known person, and reflecting that in this small town environment where Debbie is, you know, that known person.
Yes.
With this, and then again at the high school reunion, right, with Debi Radio and Bobby Beamer, and I love your show, but I don't because of the tone I'm using. All of those things, yeah.
I mean, that's an interesting point you bring up about Cusack, because now Cusack not really, like, the last thing I think I saw him in was the Stephen King adaptation Cell, with Samuel L. Jackson. It wasn't good. And I saw something else. I think he was in with Christina Ricci. He might have been, or it might have been Emma Roberts.
We saw he had we were talking about this several weeks ago. There was something he turned up in TV wise where I was like, oh, I hadn't realized he was in it, and it really made me think about going to watch that show. Hang on, I'm just going to find it now.
Was that Utopia?
That's it. He's in the American version of Utopia.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
The Channel 4 series. Yeah, he plays one of the scientists in that.
I mean, it's really in, like, the thing
Dr.
that I
Kevin
found.
Christie, that's it.
I find it really difficult. So I'm watching this, and we said a couple of episodes ago about how he does these visual tics that just builds the rapport. And one of the things I really love about John Cusack is how he did those things to build rapport. In High Fidelity, he does it with the audience. In Say Anything, he's got all these friends and everything, and he's really quite charming, really quite lovable. And this is not me saying that actors need to be charming and lovable in everything.
No, of course.
Like that. But I do find it quite interesting that once he hit a certain point, become a known person, got onto Twitter and became quite political, and it was really interesting to see just how political he is.
I mean, I think you see the foreshadowing of that in this film, and in more explicitly in Warwick, right? But there is something about his disdain for the privatization of military, for America as a global militaristic power, of like casual consumerism and corporate America, that are all reflected in this film in effective and subtle ways. I think much more effective than War Inc. And this is the advent of that. This is John Cusack being able to express these things. And I think as he goes down the road and he gets a little bit more leeway to be saying and doing what he wants, that becomes the focus. And honestly, I do kind of wonder whether he will just straight up go into politics at some point, or if he doesn't simply because he's afraid of becoming that which he despises. I don't know.
But I find it quite interesting because he's so outspoken on things like Twitter. No. So it's quite funny to watch this scene now and seeing him as a known person with other things on his mind, something serious to say, and being completely disrupted. It's like people taking shots at David Simon, where these guys are just making movies, whatever actor, whatever. And he's like, actually, no, I'm actually looking into this and I know roughly what I'm talking about and this, that, and the other. I just find that it's a really interesting life imitating art kind of parallel in this really tiny 1 minute. The idea of becoming a known person and actually having more to say than just being on the radio or just being an actor or anything else like that. It's interesting.
I do wonder if one of the reasons I assume most of the reasons he's been stuck in contracts with people like Sony churning out action junk is because tax reasons. Especially since he and Nick Cage have done one together now, which says it all. But I feel like, but I do wonder also how much of it,
isn't it? Yeah.
But I do wonder how much of it is also him being, having so much cynicism about the world of Hollywood and where it's gone and what it's become like, that he'd rather just take the check and do the job and not have to worry about it and go home and do his thing and support things otherwise. Because when he wants to, he can turn up and do something interesting like Chirac. He's in Chirac. He's in Hot Tub Time Machine because he understands the parodying element. And when he does do Stephen King's, he's good at them because he gets it right. He's from that era. So I think I feel like the guy we admire and love is still in there. We're just not seeing it anymore because of his own feelings about what that job is like and what the world is like. And this is sad because we're looking back at one of his best films and his first production as a person and as an individual, and you just kind of think, damn, man, damn.
He's kind of like David Bentley in that sense.
David
Bentley got fed up with football and decided just to open up a bar and buy a bear or something because the whole society changed. That's what happened.
But coming back to what we were saying about Minnie Driver and the way she looks at him, one thing that Amy's character does allow her to do is it allows her to refocus on the question that Martin ducks by asking her out, which is, of course, what's he been doing for 10 years? And he starts lying through his teeth with ease and practice and humor as he says he works for Kentucky Fried Chicken. And there's a close-up of Minnie looking at him. She's just leaning on her right hand, and she's just in love. She's in love. That's the guy she remembers, not the guy he is now. That's the guy she remembers. Yes. And meanwhile, Amy's going, "You're so funny. He's a funny guy." And that is literally where the minute ends. And you kind of like that look of her face, and you're like, she's going to be shocked when she finds out everything, but that deep down she really, really still has got it bad for him, and it ain't going away.
Yeah.
Rom-com moment. No guns.
All right.
End
it there?
Let's do that. This was minute 49 of the Grosse Pointe Blank podcast, Debi Radio, 79.5 FM, featuring your co-hosts, co-writers, and co-producers, Dev Soligar and Hugh David.
Today's guest was Leslie Byron Pitt, podcaster and film critic. Leslie, where can we find more about you?
So you can find me on X or Twitter, AfroFilmViewer. I'm trying to write again. So I'm back writing on my blogger site, which is AfroFilmViewer.blogspot.com. I'm also on Set the Tape, doing some reviews there, and that's where you can find some of my writing.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
You can find more of us on all good podcast players, as well as on YouTube, Twitter, aka X, and Spotify, at Debi Radio, as well as on our website, debiradio.com. And for all of those, it is Debi, spelt DEBI.
Talk with us if you want to have a chat directly on the Facebook listeners group, Debi Radio 79.5 FM fan club. Once more, that is DEBI Radio.
Sure was clear that all of this was new. Concentrating hard like a little girl, smoking for the first time. It wasn't a moment, it was a feeling.